Hey, Montel Williams here. Look, I've got some incredible news to share with you. I want to tell you about my brand new book that's coming out that's called The Sailing of the Intrepid. Now, this book is more than just an historical account. It's a tribute to the brave men who served aboard the USS Intrepid and a celebration of their extraordinary legacy. Writing this book was such an incredible story, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share it with you. So don't wait to grab your little piece of history. The book is available right now to order. You can go to montelmedia.com, and you can even get a limited autograph signed copy. Now, thank you so much for your support. I can't wait for you to read this incredible story of the sailing of the Intrepid. I'll see you on the pages. Well, hey guys, welcome back to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, the podcast where we have real conversations about cannabis, psychedelics, and the ways they're reshaping lives in the industry. I'm your host, Montel Williams, and today's episode is one I know you don't want to miss. We're digging deep into holistic wellness and the pioneering use of cannabis and psychedelics in treating conditions like PTSD, addiction, and even traumatic brain injuries. And joining me today is someone who is truly on the front lines of this movement. Mr. Gary Roberts is an 18-year career firefighter who's seen firsthand the toll that trauma and addiction can take on individuals and their families. He's a founder and CEO of Promises Innovative Recovery and Neurovus CBD. And he's here to share how plant medicine and holistic protocols are not just helping individuals, but also changing how we approach mental health and the mental health treatment altogether. Gary, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. Your story is inspiring as it is as inspiring as it is impactful. I can't wait to hear all that you have to say. And I know that our listeners want to listen in and hear you too. So Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Montel. And I would like to thank you for your service in the military. You know, it means a lot to us firefighters as well that you participated in that.
Well, I'll give you a little secret. My father was a 30-year firefighter. He ended up ascending to the rank of a chief of the fire department for Baltimore City. First African-American chief of a major city fire department in America.
So your family's a little aware of what firefighters end up going through on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's lots of the trauma that my father experienced, lots of traumas along the way. Held him in most of the time, but he ended up, before he became the commissioner or the chief of fire department, he ended up serving as the commissioner of multiple other departments for Baltimore City. He was the commissioner of transportation, the commissioner of public works. Then he went back to the fire department to be chief before he retired.
Well, glad he served as well. And, we'll honor your father as well in that service. And that is one of the biggest driving forces that I'm looking at, is bringing to light what firefighters go through every day.
People need to understand. I know right now, coming out of the California that huge fire that they had there. I know PTSD is systemic. It is. I think what they're saying that somewhere between 20 to 25% of the firefighters and first responders that responded for those fires are literally suffering from PTSD today. And I'd like to share with you something before we even get started. I've been working on a protocol that may be helpful in your settings. It's a protocol. It's called RTM. I'm not sure if you're aware of it or not, but it has now been listed as what should be the standard of care for anybody suffering from PTSD, because 9 out of every 10 people who go through this protocol literally remit 100% of their symptoms in 5 to 10 hours, no medication.
That's incredible. Definitely interested in learning more about that. I haven't heard anything about that, but definitely intrigued to learning a little bit more.
Sure, I'll share with you, because right now it literally is deployed in Ukraine, Poland, been deployed all over the world, California, New Mexico. As a matter of fact, right now 9 states have come together to try to train clinicians on how to administer the protocol. And the thing that's so crazy about it, Gary, is that it can be administered virtually.
That's the new technology. It's coming up. That's one of the biggest things we've been looking at as well as virtual reality to try and get access to firefighters.
Yep, absolutely. So if a firefighter doesn't have to travel to a center or have to go out of their home, they can sit in their home in front of a computer with a clinician on the other end and they deliver the treatment and with the same efficaciousness as if it was being done live and in face to face.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest stigmas with firefighters is, trying to find a facility to go to because a lot of times the facilities we end up going to, they have actually the patients that we end up picking up on a daily basis and overdose, and it feels a little weird for them to actually tell their stories to people that they actually helped themselves. So
Right.
having an aspect where they can actually do it from their homes is actually quite unique and very productive.
It's incredible. Remember, this thing has been double blind studied at Walter Reed, at King's College. Has literally, I think there's been more studies done on its ability to help remit symptoms than any other protocol out there. The closest thing to it is, and I'm sure you know, is which is called what is it? Exposure therapy, which has been a therapy that's the military has used for 30 years now, and it's never proven to be more than 37% efficacious. Whereas this protocol is at least 90% efficacious, which and all the tests that they've done, it seems to come out the same.
That's incredible, especially since I've been telling everybody, 85 or 80 to 85% of us will actually most likely die by suicide than in the line of duty deaths. That's a stat that's been we've been talking about. 30 to 35% of us actually just thoughts of suicide. So having something that it can actually help us through our 30, 25, 30, 35 year career, because they're hiring younger and younger nowadays. And we need to start teaching these young bucks exactly how they can protect themselves to have a long lasting, healthy career.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'll make sure we share that with you and get you to the website. It's real simple. It's rtm.com. So you just go up on the website and the information is there. Okay. But now,
100%, definitely looking forward.
absolutely. So thank you so much for being a part of our show today. Let's be blunt. You've got a truly incredible story from being a firefighter to witnessing trauma daily to now being at the front line of cannabis and psychedelic certified wellness. Let's start with your journey. What led you to the world first of first responders to this holistic path?
Well, I've always enjoyed it helping other people and figuring out, how to lead them to lead better lives. I was a personal trainer earlier, and I decided to become a firefighter from that point on. But as my career ended up going into different directions in the fire service, we started with a lot of overdoses in the state of Florida. Florida, we had a big cases about not 2018, 2019, where they were doing patient brokering, basically they were actually brokering patients to get back into insurance. They would come out and get them back, and it was a big, big deal until they had a law passed that no patient brokering was ever allowed again. Unfortunately, my daughter ended up being one of those patients. She ended up being in a car accident, being addicted to opioids, and she ended up going in and out of rehabs about 3 or 4 times. And she knew what was going on. And during that time, Florida started passing the 2018 hemp bill was being passed, and Florida was looking into medicinal cannabis and hemp products. And we decided to talk to my daughter. Says, "Would you be interested in more of a medicinal aspect?" And she was. And we were looking at those different types of products. It still weren't legal in the state of Florida. Myself, I was going through a personal injury of a double Achilles tendonitis during my firefighting career. And if you've ever had a Achilles tendonitis, it's kind of like walking on shards of glass daily. I had that in both feet, and I was on basically 1,000 milligrams of Aleve daily, trying to figure out what I can do. And I ended up trying some hemp products. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. And then I finally decided to create my own product that actually worked. And it relieved it. Funny story is when I I took it, my wife actually says, you got to be crazy. That ain't working. It's got to be placebo effect. And I'm like, well, the guy I am, I always try things first. So I went out and started working out even harder to see if I can reinflame my Achilles tendonitis. And in fact, it didn't. And that's where we started down the road of creating CBD products. And unfortunately, before Florida signed their bill and they were actually get all their laws in, my daughter ended up passing away on her 27th birthday from an opiate overdose.
So sorry to hear that.
Thank
And
you. So
she never had an opportunity to try any of it.
she did not have an opportunity to try that. That was the most disappointing thing. But she did have a thought of how to stop the patient brokering. She decided to create a nonprofit called Promises Recovery that would actually take the insurance companies out of the picture and do more of a holistic benefit type style for addicts. And she couldn't get that off the ground. So we're slowly progressing that forward for her.
And that is
But at the
called
same
Promises Innovative Recovery. Talk to
that's
us about
the nonprofit is called Promises Recovery. So you can go to promisescares.com and donate there. That's basically allows donations to create scholarships and tuition for first responders and anybody suffering with addiction or PTSD to get innovative therapies, whether it's medicinal cannabis, psychedelic treatments, or even maybe the therapy that you're talking about.
it. And that's really what sets your center apart from all the others, is it not?
Yes, yes. We started investigating what was going on, what was going on, what was not going on, and basically figure out how can we create something different. And as we were looking into it, we were asking questions: what's not being done? We found out for the last decade, over $30 billion has been done for research for PTSD, mental health, using everything from psychedelics to ultrasounds to everything. But literally, no place was actually taking that research and creating an active site to actually implement these researches. So it looked wonderful on paper, but we needed to start creating a site that can actually start treating people, start advancing these treatments to even further to see what goes on. And that's where we came up with the idea of PIR, Innovative Recovery, a facility that would not only treat patients, but every patient would actually come would be able to advance research, as well as be able to educate physicians on the use of medicinal cannabis, psychedelics, VR, and other capabilities. That whole project was actually built on a technological platform that basically would gather real world or real time data that would help advance these protocols.
Well, there still is quite a lot of stigma around cannabis and psychedelics, but the studies and the data coming out are hard to ignore. Can you give us in the audience a little sense of how these treatments have been impacting conditions like PTSD and addiction? We know for a fact that this is close to 10 years ago, more than that, almost 14 years ago now. I think it was NYU did a study showing that cannabis could be an effective exit drug for opioid addiction. That's been proven now around the world, duplicated multiple times. But now there's the difference between a medical cannabis program, like Florida does have, and this hemp based program that exists. So, talk a little bit about how these treatments are truly working.
Well, the hemp aspect, I can't really talk about the medicinal aspect because we're still actually, and this is one of the things I'm advocating, we're still actually in the state of Florida drug tested for the use of THC. And I've been advocating to change these drug testing to actually allow us, A, to get federally legal hemp with little bit of THC in it. Because when our products that we provided to firefighters and the ones that I tried had a little bit of THC in it, we started seeing people come forward. And this is unique to a type A personality like a firefighter. I'm sure you understand that from your family. Is that these individuals came forward and says, "Hey, listen, I took your product. I didn't know what was going on, but I used to have these voices, but these voices started to calm down. My sleep started to get better. I didn't want to drink as much alcohol, and all these new effects that were actually coming through were actually coming back to me. And I started thinking, like, we're on to something here. Let's try and get the drug testing policy changed so that we can actually change the stigma in the fire department and have access maybe to CBD products, which slowly can lead to medicinal cannabis down the road." And that's what I started leading into. And unfortunately, the fire departments seem to have a different opinion of that. And they still had the stigma that most firefighters decided to want to party more than actually get better.
So, Gary, what's been one of the biggest hurdles of getting Promises Innovative Recovery off the ground and advocating for psychedelics? I mean, psychedelics have been recognized as legitimate forms of treatment for the military and in civilian world. So, what's been one of your biggest hurdles?
Regulatory has been the biggest hurdles, to be honest. It's kind of like the same thing with cannabis. When cannabis is going through, it's still federally illegal in certain places. They still haven't figured out whether it's going to be a one or a three. So, now you head on down to psychedelics, which is they think it's a more of a stronger compound. But what we ended up doing is we ended up talking to different people and says, we want to build a site like this in the United States. And they says, no, well, you can't do it because of legal, regulatory, and everything else. And we started wondering where else can we build a center like this that's actually comparable to the United States, that we can actually do research and advance it. And that's where we were introduced to a congresswoman out in Costa Rica. That they were actually signing their first medical cannabis bill about 2 years ago. And we started doing some research and found out that Costa Rica's medical research is on par with that of Health Canada and the United States. There's Johnson and Johnson out there, Pfizer out there doing research. So to be able to do research with the people in Costa Rica, it would be able to bridge that gap with the United States at a fraction of the cost. So we started looking at whether we could actually build a site out there. And we investigated the whole retreat aspect of it. And we says, okay, we don't want to be a retreat. That's the last thing we want to do. We want to be a center of excellence where we can actually treat, study, and educate everything that's worth using, from cannabis to psychedelics, in a very holistic manner, but also be able to carry the data to show that it actually works, backed by science. And we went out and got partnerships to do that.
And can you share some of the notable findings that your clinical trials have already conducted so far?
Well, unfortunately, our clinic is not open. We're actually in the process of raising funds for the clinic. We went out and actually got all the partnerships from one of the largest MDMA psilocybin companies to support us. We've got contracts with the government of Costa Rica and medical research hospitals out there. So we wanted to make sure that we actually had a viable project before we started looking at raising the capital to do that. And with those partnerships, that's what we ended up doing.
And have there been any studies conducted by those other organizations that you can share?
I know right now MAPS has done the study on MDMA. They're the big people in the news. I know the FDA did not pass their breakthrough, their next level for MDMA, but they actually found that MDMA, uh, basically, I hate to use the word, but it's basically what it does, cures PTSD. Like 67% no longer had symptoms of PTSD when they first went in using these compounds. So we wanted to create something to show that real world, real data showing how these compounds actually have the effect on them. So studies like that are pushing the barriers of what we're looking to do.
And do you envision psychedelics evolving and having a broader, impact on the mental health treatment over the next decade or so?
Oh, 100%. I see not only the treatments for psychedelics, they help PTSD, depression, anxiety, addiction, but also for things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, things that the brains are actually that have injuries are actually looking to get better. Psychedelics are showing great promise in those aspects. But what we're also looking at is the ability to do microdosing, which are small doses of psychedelics. So therefore, we don't always have to go back. So we're not building another addiction to a compound. We're building something that we can actually use in little doses that we can continue throughout our lives to create better outcomes.
So far, I know that there have not been any studies that have confirmed an addiction to psychedelics. Psychedelics work. People have used them on multiple occasions, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're addicted. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you've encountered about the use of psychedelics in a therapeutic setting?
One of the biggest things you just said is that people think they're going to get addicted. You're transferring from one compound to another. The other one is that the settings are unsafe. Basically, people are going to these places in Costa Rica, Peru, and they're not basically medically followed. So they're going to use these compounds. I think there's a study done in Forbes that some of the top CEOs were actually going to use a substance called ayahuasca, and they would come back completely different people, no longer want to be CEOs. So people are started thinking, okay, well, these compounds can change individuals so drastically. Are they actually safe, or is it even worth somebody actually investigating this? And that's some of the stigmas that we've been actually trying to overcome. And studies show that, it's you can change, but as long as you have a pre integration, post integration, and actually do these with a plan and not just go out there and say, hey, I want to do some sort of psychedelics and see what comes out of it.
Right. And are there specific conditions or patient populations that you believe could benefit the most from these kind of treatments?
I believe veterans who have been in combat will actually benefit the most. Some studies with ibogaine have shown some great progress. I think ibogaine is actually on the ballot in Texas to actually become legal to be used for mental health for veterans and all that. MDMA is another compound. Psilocybin is a big one that's coming out that individuals are looking at, and a lot of it, the half life is not that long.
Go ahead.
A lot of it's the half life is not that long, so it's trying to get the setting and the intention down. And that's the biggest thing is you have to go into these compounds wanting something out of them, not just going to see what they can do. And that's where people will have to go with a preclinical integration, have some questions answered, be honest with what they're looking to outcomes. Because again, these compounds aren't for everybody. They sometimes may work and may not work. We don't want people going in and saying it's the magical pill for everything.
Right. And what challenges do you foresee in achieving, let's say, widespread insurance coverage for psychedelic assisted therapies?
I believe the insurance companies are waiting for the protocols and the safety measures to actually come out, and that's one of the biggest things we saw at creating our facility. We actually been in touch with different underwriters for insurance companies and says, okay, to create these protocols, what would you be looking for? And that's what we were looking to actually do. Not only treat, but create safety protocols that would actually come and benefit of sites that would open up throughout the United States or globally that wanted to use these compounds, allowing them to actually see how it works. And I think that's the biggest thing that happened with cannabis as well, is we need those protocols, safety protocols backed by medicine, backed by research, not just anecdotally, which a lot of the stuff is actually right now in psychedelics.
How are you using PIR to educate the public to foster a better understanding and acceptance of these treatments?
Well, right now, again, like I said, PIR is still in the process of getting funding, but I actually have a podcast called Good Dudes Grow, which actually brings on veterans, sports athletes, and physicians explaining the process that they went through, explaining the process how they should be used, and explaining different processes on what needs to be done to make it safe for everybody else. So my goal is to teach people basically the compounds work, but they need to be used, done, and done in a safe manner.
And that's some of the things. I mean, what steps are being taken to ensure that there's a safe and ethical administration of psilocybin therapies as they become more and more mainstream? I know in California, there have been some licensed clinics opened up that are allowed to use them. Um, do you see or foresee in the future or near future this happening across the board in states across the country? I mean, we watched the rollout of cannabis, and now we're at what, 38, 39 states in the District of Columbia. Are we going to see that same kind of a rollout when it comes to psychedelics?
I do, but I'm a little bit cautious in saying that. I don't see, due to the way the compounds work, I don't see them working out in many clinics. I see them more working out in a kind of like a long-term resort. Because what ends up happening in clinics, you're looking at maybe an 8-hour MDMA treatment. The last thing you want to do is go in, do a psychedelic, then be thrown back into traffic, being thrown back into your life. That's all a mess. You need actually time to process exactly what the psychedelics actually brought to you, what you're looking at, and everything else. So I'm a little bit cautious on the clinics. I know psilocybin is a little bit less intense, and that may be one that actually, but I think we need to be cautious on actually just doing daily studies or treatments for hourly patients and just throwing them back in the normal population.
Yeah, I know Ibogaine has been gaining some traction, but ketamine has already been out there, and especially when it comes to microdosing of those, is gaining a lot of traction. So, I mean, how do you balance the urgency of making the treatment accessible with the thoroughness required in research and regulation? You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's kind of a strange balance here. We're trying to make them more and more accessible to patients, but at the same time, we have to go through a process where we really do some research and regulation. It's kind of like, balls up in the air right this minute.
Exactly, and that's why we're looking at developing more of a long-term protocol, long-term research study, not just about using the compounds, but what's happening before the patient gets to use the compounds, why they're using the compounds, and then long-term afterwards, from everything from integration to their therapy sessions. And we're using stuff like wearables and stuff like that to actually keep track of these individuals. And I think that'll help create the protocols and the safety measures a little bit long term. Right now, everybody's looking at the anecdotal studies of, okay, it worked now, but we still don't know what happens with the long term effects. Like I said, with the Forbes thing, the CEOs were going back and forth nonstop, saying, okay, the compound worked, but I need more, and that's where I said, that addiction kind of process comes in, because they feel that the compound itself is what's actually doing the work, when it's actually what you need to do is you need to do the work yourself after you use the compound.
And I mean, I don't want to use the rumor mill, but I mean, there are rumors that some of our top consultants to our administration happen to be regular users of microdosed psychedelic products. Do you think that's going to impact the way that the rest of the nation looks at this?
I hope so. I hope because like I said, I've seen several top professionals use microdosing. Microdosing is a small aspect of what goes on, and they've been very beneficial. They're more calmer. They're more how do you say it? They're more creative. They have more ideas, and I think that's what the big thing that these psychedelics have an opportunity to do, kind of unglue or unstick your thinking. And I think that would actually be great for the whole country because I think that would help with a lot of the hatred that's going on. That if we can actually get unglued from our basic thoughts and work together, I think it would be huge for everybody in the nation.
Robert, for those people who've been tuned in and listening to this conversation, it's maybe confusing to them as to whether or not they try to start cannabis kind of a treatment or they try, psychedelics. So what would you say to a person? Is this something that you got to find, in your local area, somebody who understands? I mean, I know there are places all over the country that have popped up that are giving people opportunities to come in and work with psychedelics. But, should they be reticent? Should they think that there might be an opportunity here for them?
Yeah, if they're looking to use these type of compounds, they could start slowly, like you says. There are ketamine clinics around. If you're looking for a psychedelic option, you could start with a ketamine clinic and talk to an individual there. My biggest recommendation is don't go in blindly thinking that these compounds will be the cure to everything that's going to solve you. All right. It's an adjunct to what you're already doing. If you've tried everything and you're looking to get off some stuff and try something new, start slow. Talk to a ketamine clinic that's actually doing these projects. But then also there's some large veteran nonprofits that have access to different trials and also have access to different facilities, whether it's in Colorado, Oregon, that are actually treating already patients with high success, and these individuals have been doing it for a while. You can reach out to them or reach out to me and I could put you in contact with them, and then you can ask them all the questions. Ask as many questions as possible before just jumping into these compounds.
And from a personal standpoint, I don't know if if you can answer this question or not, but I mean, have you been down this course and you tried a few of different ones, and what has it felt like for you?
I have not been down that course since I'm still an active firefighter, but my goal is to gain more knowledge for individuals and create preventative medicine using these compounds. See, as firefighters, a lot of us get actually body scans and we get poked and probed in all different areas looking for cancers and lumps and everything else from the neck down. I'm advocating to try and figure out, can we do something from the neck up that'll actually help us prevent the development of mental health conditions? And that's where these compounds seem like a bright light, whether it's microdosing or even going away to a treatment facility that's running these facilities and then come back and knowing what's happening. I think that's going to be a huge and something that in the future we're going to see happen.
And right now, I mean, it's clear that almost every state in the country approaches this differently. I think in New York State, they no longer are testing for even low levels of THC in people because, a lot of CBD products have, nanoparticle THC that's still there, even though it's well below 3.03%, it'll still test positive in some of the drug testing protocols that they have around the country. But in like in New York State, they're allowing EMTs and firefighters to kind of they take into account that there might be some little bit of THC there, so they kind of don't test for it. Are you starting to see that more and more around the country?
I'm starting to see that more and more around the country, and that's what I'm a big advocate for here in Florida. Florida is one of we have a medicinal cannabis population. It's very well known. It's working very well. We have a huge hemp, like you said, with the 0.3% THC business in here. But unfortunately, several departments still have that antiquated drug testing policy that tests for a metabolite that even secondhand smoke can actually activate. We can't get high in secondhand smoke, but the chemicals in our body can't create that false testing. And I've been advocating for my department to actually change those testing to actually make it more of a THC level. One of their biggest excuses was, oh, we can't figure out whether you're impaired or not. Well, first of all, CBD and hemp products, 0.3%, have already been shown not to be psychoactive, so we're not going to be impaired on those. And they're no longer on the federally banned substance list, for even testing for those is ridiculous. But if there are tests now that have come up in the state of Florida, including for my fire department, that show a THC level, that would be more like an alcohol test level. And if we follow the levels like Colorado and other places that have recreational, we can change those testing that allow firefighters access to at least federally legal CBD and get the sleep, the pain relief, or even some of the symptoms that I talked to you earlier about, and help these firefighters enjoy themselves. And then maybe later on down the road, when regulations relax a little bit more, we can actually look at getting into fully medicinal cannabis.
And I don't want you, well, I do want you to put on your crystal ball. Do you think that we're going to, I mean, are we shifting? I mean, at one time, I thought we were trying to shift more towards acceptance of things like cannabis use, and I find out that the DEA is going to do some national campaign on 420 to have people come up and say the negative effects of cannabis. It's like they just can't seem to let it go. And I think part of this is because, we're exhausting a tool that a lot of, administrations around the country have used as an imprisonment tool. We got to remember, people don't understand that, that certain police departments, were using cannabis as their own way to make sure they put brown and black people in prison. And so now if you take that away, they're angry. So, but do you see us shifting a little bit? Or are we starting to head towards the right direction? Because, I mean, what we just came out of in California and what we see around the country, firefighters and first responders, just like our military have had to bear the brunt of traumatic experiences trying to help others. I mean, we came out of COVID where, we had EMTs knocking on doors and finding dead bodies all the time. And so, that starts to build up in the psyches of those who are trying to serve and help us. Do you see us finally headed in the right direction to being able to say, let's find whatever we need to find to help alleviate some of this PTSD that our firefighters and first responders are falling subject to?
I do. I see it heading that way. The crystal ball issue that I see, to be honest with you, is the battle between medicinal and recreational. Because once you start telling administrations and fire chiefs that, oh, we want recreational cannabis to happen, they automatically go by and see the old Cheech and Chong movies of people partying and everything else. They're not looking at the medicinal benefits. And I think that battle between the two origins, from medicinal and recreational, becomes a big hindrance on whether we're actually going to have the administration change it from a 1 to a 3 that shows medical aspects in. But facilities like ours and facilities are still using these cannabis products to actually show, we need to gather that data and bring it to the forefront, not just anecdotally, not just saying it works. We need to actually, backed by science, do some specific research and basically continuously bring it forward, and have people like myself and yourself educate the population and say, we're not interested in partying. We can do that with alcohol. We can fake drug tests with other compounds, with opiates. Listen, we can take opiates. We can take Adderall. We can take it all as long as we have a prescription. But I can't take a plant. It's redundantly ridiculous, and we need to start educating the population that we're not interested in just partying. We're interested in not dying or committing suicide to leave our families by the end of our career.
Absolutely. Gary, I can't thank you enough for such a powerful conversation and the important work that you're doing. I hope you get the funding that you need to get PIR up and running. To our listeners, if they wanted to find out more information about you, where would they go?
They can go to my podcast, gooddudesgrow.com, or they can go to promisescares.com. I'm always available. Or they can even reach me out at groberts at PIR on Instagram and just shoot me a quick message, and I'll help them direct them in any direction they want or answer any questions they have.
Absolutely. And for all of our listeners, they have to remember that healing often starts with just one small step at a time in the right direction. I can't say thank you enough for being a part of the show today, sir. And I wish you well, wish your family well, and continue doing what you're doing. Come back to us down in the future and give us an update. Let us know what's happening so we can keep getting the word out, all right?
100%. I appreciate you for having me on the show, Montel.
I thank you so much, sir. You take care of yourself. And for you, you make sure you keep tuning in to Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments. Hey guys, Montel Williams here. Did you know that you could save 20% on your medical cannabis card today? That's right. With LeafWell, you can connect with a licensed healthcare provider through their easy-to-use telehealth platform. Whether you're managing chronic pain, anxiety, or just exploring cannabis for health reasons, LeafWell makes it quick, simple, and stress-free. And here's the best part. When you head to leafwell.com/Montel, you'll get an exclusive 20% discount off your medical cannabis card. Why wait? Join over 1 million satisfied users who trust LeafWell with their cannabis care. So that's right. All you got to do is go to leafwell.com/Montel and get started today and save 20%.